Dear Diary, am I the a-hole for going no contact with my sister after she made a pass at my husband? I'm a 48-year-old woman, and I've been with my husband, Mike, 52, for almost 14 years, married for 8 of them. He's my rock, my best friend, and the person I trust most in the world. That trust has been tested in ways I never anticipated, mostly thanks to my half-sister, Sherry, 58. Sherry moved to our area a few years ago, looking for a fresh start. I tried to be supportive, despite knowing her reputation for creating drama. She has this uncanny ability to stir up chaos and, when confronted, morph into the ultimate victim. Still, she's family, so when she asked me to help her get a job at the place where both my husband Mike and I worked, me on second shift and Mike on third, I reluctantly agreed. I wasn't exactly eager to put in a good word for her, given her history, but against my better judgment and against Mike's advice, I went ahead and mentioned her to my supervisor. To my surprise, she was hired almost immediately. Looking back, I wish I'd listened to him. For the first few months, things were manageable. Sherry started carpooling with me since I drove past her place on my way to work. At first, it seemed convenient, but it didn't take long for problems to arise. One day, she wore a specific perfume that triggered my allergies terribly. I was coughing, sneezing, my eyes were watering, and I experienced a pounding headache. It was awful. After I explained my reaction, I politely asked her not to wear it on workdays, and she seemed understanding at first. She apologized and promised not to wear it again. The very next day, she forgot and wore it again. As if that wasn't bad enough, halfway to work, she pulled the bottle out of her purse and sprayed it in the car. The scent filled the car as the car vent circulated it everywhere. I instantly felt the familiar pounding headache. I pulled over, rolled down all the windows, and told her to get out of my car. She apologized profusely, claiming she wasn't thinking, and promised it would not happen again, and I reluctantly let it slide. Spoiler alert, that wasn't the last time. A couple of weeks later, she decided to up the ante on the embarrassment scale. While I was working, she came to my workstation, shouted my name, and, brace yourself, started twerking in front of my coworkers. Yes, my 58-year-old half-sister was twerking in a workplace in front of all my coworker. I was mortified. My coworkers, who I respect and work with daily, were snickering, and I just wanted to crawl under my desk and disappear. But things didn't stop there. Later that night, during our overlapping shifts, I went on my break as my husband, Mike, was clocking in for his shift. We exchanged a quick kiss on the cheek, no PDA at work, that's just how we roll, and then went about our business. As I walked away, I noticed Sherry sitting in the third shift break room. She decided to linger in the break room where Mike was chatting with his coworkers. The next day, Sherry was unusually quiet during our ride to work. As soon as we parked, she stepped out of the car, opened the door wide, and sprayed that damned perfume again. I was livid. I told her to shut the door and asked her why she'd do something so inconsiderate. She smugly replied that it was the same scent as the cologne I had once bought for Mike. Yes, I had purchased it but later discovered I was allergic, so he never wore it again. Sherry insisted it was still Mike's favorite. At the time, I was too dense to pick up on her implication. During my lunch break, I called Mike as usual to make sure he was awake and getting ready to come into work. Mike asked me if I'd talked to Sherry recently. He seemed annoyed, which is rare for him. When I asked why, his response stunned me. He described how Sherry had made him feel extremely uncomfortable the night before. "You know how I look at a steak on the grill when it's almost done?" he said. That's how she was looking at me, like I was a steak. I laughed, thinking Mike was joking, but he wasn't. He told me that Sherry had been staring at him inappropriately, licking her lips, sticking out her chest, and saying, "Hey, brother-in-law," in what he described as a sultry voice. It had made him so uncomfortable that he asked me to address it with her directly. He told me to tell her that her actions made him uncomfortable and that it wasn't appropriate to wait until I left to talk to him. At first, I was stunned. Mike isn't one to exaggerate or make up stories. He is a straight shooter, so I believed him. But before I could process it fully, one of my coworkers, let's call her Monica, approached me during lunch. She pulled me aside to tell me that Sherry had been acting inappropriately toward Mike, being flirtatious, saying and doing things that raised eyebrows among the staff. By the end of the day, about 4 other coworkers had come to me with similar complaints and stories. My embarrassment turned into anger. I was furious. That night, I debated whether to confront Sherry. I drove her home in silence, seething. When we were close to her house, she asked, "Is everything okay? You seem really quiet. Did Mike say something to upset you?" I couldn't hold it in any longer. "Yes," I said. As a matter of fact, he did. "He asked me to give you a message." Her eyes lit up and she asked, "Really? What did he say?" I told her, word for word, what Mike had said about her behavior and how uncomfortable it made him feel. Her face fell. She immediately started denying it, batting her eyes and playing the victim. She even tried to claim Mike was lying to cause trouble between us. I told her that multiple coworkers had witnessed her behavior and warned me about her. She continued to deny it, her voice rising, until I reminded her to lower her tone. Then she pulled the ultimate guilt trip. "I can't believe you'd listen to him over your own sister." That's when I snapped. I told her that being my sister was the only reason she wasn't in a hospital bed or a jail cell. I reminded her of her past indiscretions, like the time our dad caught her with our brother's girlfriend and, more recently, when she slept with our niece's husband and left her clothes by their bed as proof. She went silent after that. As we neared her house, she demanded I let her out of the car since I believed what Mike told me. I slammed on the brakes and she stormed out, walking the rest of the way home. I have not spoken to her since. That was in 2021. Since then, Sherry has gone out of her way to paint herself as the victim to the rest of our family. I'm not sure what version of the story she's told them, but it's clear it wasn't the truth. Now, they're pressuring me to reconcile with her, saying I should forgive and forget. But I refuse. I've set boundaries for a reason. I've seen what happens when I let Sherry back into my life, and it's always chaos. I won't feed into her drama or allow her to disrupt my marriage. So, am I the a-hole for standing my ground and going no contact with my half-sister?
Dear Diary,